About 200,000 in 3 hours. I actually had a job lined up for UPS.
I was sick in the hospital, I was on a ventilator, and I was dying.
60 to 70,000, no refund from the manufacturer.
It takes a lot of discipline, time, and effort. You will never, ever, ever be able to replace that in any business.
That's how Mentality started.
This brand did $200,000 in sales in 3 hours. No Super Bowl ad, no celebrity paid placement, just a quote, a community, and a screen printer.
Very few people get to crack open the black Amex. It means you are the 1% of entrepreneur. With every black American Express card, you actually get a Prada bracelet that is a tap to pay. It's cool to have a cool little wrist strap.
I want to take you guys behind the scenes on what it took to print the first shirt to how they're scaling with bulk manufacturing, cut and sew. We're diving into a lot of game that these guys are sharing. I'm excited, and I think it really begins with the story of how Jason was able to take it from print on demand, and we're gonna go take a tour of the factory and get this thing going.
My name is Jason Hill, founder of Mentality. I started all the way back when I was 12 or 11 years old. I was posting YouTube videos. Started with Call of Duty, done pretty well. So I was making money, 12 years old, having like high schoolers, college kids pay me money to be on their friends list. Yeah, after that, I quit Call of Duty to focus on football. That's where I fell into social media. So I started making YouTube videos, editing motivational football videos, a couple 100,000 views. I started getting on Instagram 2018. By then, Instagram was pretty big. I spent maybe $120, grew it to like 40K back then. It was called Ball Adrenaline, just posting football videos and edits. Followers, 80K. I decided I wanted to start a clothing brand, so I changed the name to Ballwear, and that was the first failed e-commerce project.
Ballwear?
B-A-L-L-W-E-A-R, yeah, Ballwear.
Is it like underwear or?
No, literally had a photo of me playing football with arm sleeves, and I was drop shipping arm sleeves. And yeah, had like maybe 3 sales. So what I learned from that is community is pretty important. 3 or 4 months later, I saw Mentality on the market, so got a great deal for that. I just switched the usernames, probably did like a few months of the same content until I tested a quote only post. Again, just understanding workload from YouTube to Instagram, and then switching content themes. So it was 60K followers was Ballwear, that failed. And then I decided just to switch to quotes only, and grew it to about 100,000, 120,000 followers as Mentality. The first products were print on demand, and that was around 100,000, 120,000 followers. I actually had a job lined up for UPS because I had dropped out of college twice. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna make this work. I'll just pack orders or whatever, or be a UPS driver and make this work. Did the full drop. I think got like 5,000 or 6,000 in sales, and that was enough for me to say, all right, I'm gonna skip this interview. I'm just gonna go all in with this clothing stuff. All the money I made from those initial print on demand orders with the hoodies, I put it into a sample order for these custom bracelets. 50 to 70,000 in sales. Because bracelets, I think we were selling for $12, and it's like, it's a bracelet at the end of the day. It was time to get more legit products in line on the website.
Print on demand got them proof, but proof doesn't scale. The next move was in carrying inventory. But picking the wrong product at this stage is where most clothing brands die. Right here, we're actually inside of a warehouse. So this warehouse has a bunch of different blank tees. So your best moment that you guys had when it came to sales, what did that look like in a 24 or a 3-day period, or how many hours did you guys hit, and what was your best selling moment?
Yeah, so it's about 200,000 in 3 hours on a Black Friday. Much more hectic than this.
And then when it came to what you guys were you doing all print on demand products during that drop, or were you doing a mix, or how did that look?
That was a mix, just because we wanted to stock up the website. I'd say it was like 90-10. 90-10 was everything stocked in the warehouse, 10% POD, just to add some volume to the collection.
And as we walk through this different warehouse full of different blanks, what is it that you guys look for in a blank product to print your brand?
So if you can get a solid blank for the boxy silhouette, you're good to go, especially you got the right graphics.
And that's kind of what Mentality really focuses on, is the graphic design and the messaging. But the truth is, a brand is only as good as the operators. And the Mentality brand wouldn't be here today without the co-founder, John Tran.
Hey, I'm John. I'm the co-founder of Mentality. I actually first met my business partner, Jason, in an online forum. I was really aspiring to do things online, to make clothing, to start an Instagram brand, to do something digital, because I was tired of actually working day in and day out when I used to teach at the university. Originally starting, we did a lot of on-demand products, which is custom embroidery, custom quotes. A lot of it was customization, but over time, like, that became very difficult. So we started to pull all of our great top selling quotes, and then we started putting on clothing. That is what really kind of shifted. So the best way to validate something is obviously you need to do A/B testing, or you need to do polling. So print on demand and on-demand services are phenomenal because it allows you to rapidly sample and also test, infinitely. So typically your cost of good, that's how you're going to quantify how much profit you make. If X shirt costs $15 and I sell for $30, I have a $15 margin on it. With DTG, your margin or your cost of good is significantly higher. It's maybe $20 and you net effective $10. With screen printing, it can be as low as $7, $8 depending on the quantity.
You guys are in a facility right now that does print on demand, and this was one of the methods and ways that you guys first got started. I wanted to really talk about how you went from a print on demand product to scaling to screen printing, cut and sew, and much more. So can you explain, this is one of your designs, can you explain a little bit about what we're looking at here and what the whole strategy is between print on demand and screen printing?
So now in a world where we want things right away, so does the customer, and so do you, right, as a business operator. Typically, when you screen print, it could take up to 2 weeks because of the low price. A lot of people will do screen printing, but if you do multicolor, it gets very complex. So DTG is the quickest way to go from just an idea, a sketch, and literally on the shirt within 5 minutes.
So the idea to execution is how you guys are using DTG to launch product.
Again, if this was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you would have to do a full-on size run of this. So let's just say I have 5 designs. I would have to print 3,000 units just to break even or get a good affordable price. Or I can just print a few shirts, whatever the demand is. Maybe out of the 5 designs, maybe only 2 actually take off. And then I'll go to screen print after we do DTG to sample it.
Okay, incredible. Print on demand is what gave Jason the ability to test this idea without spending $1 up front. If no orders come in, no money is going out. And the process to this is simple. The blank t-shirt you select gets pre-treated and printed one at a time, whether it's one color or full color. And then it's cured through an oven, and the final product is something that will last for years. But because this is done one at a time, your cost per unit never drops. Whether you sell 1 shirt, 10 shirts, or 10,000 shirts to this method, you're paying the same price. And that's where screen printing changes the game. Your design gets burned onto a screen, there's 1 screen per color, and the inks are then mixed to the specifications you provide. The press then runs your full order in a fraction of the time. But because there's more prep work up front, that means that there's a minimum order commitment. Here at Golden Manufacturing, that starts at 36 units, but the more volume you bring, the lower your cost per unit drops. And that's where your margins actually start working for you. Now, before we dive into how they found their manufacturers, I want to get a quick word in from the sponsors making this video possible, which is .store domains. Now, Jason mentioned earlier him having to invest into the Mentality username. It was an inactive profile on Instagram, and he needed to pay money in order to acquire it. And he did this across the entire internet. And a domain name is the same thing you need to consider for your brand. Now, a .store domain specifically tells your customers exactly what they're walking into. When they see your brand on .store, they instinctively know it's a place to buy, and the data backs this up. Websites on a .store get 87% more traffic and rank 2 times higher on Google. And it's no wonder that over 1.5 million sellers trust it, including Mr. Beast, Cristiano Ronaldo, Rihanna, and the Emirates, as well as Dude Perfect. When you grab your domain, you also unlock Elevate.store for free, which gives you exclusive deals on Canva, Shopify, and many other platforms that you're gonna need to start and grow. And for a limited time, you can grab your own .store domain using the links and code that we have in the description right down below. Make sure you take advantage of that. And if this video has brought you any value so far, hit that subscribe button and let's keep going. But knowing the process is one thing. Knowing where to find the right manufacturing partner is what most brand owners get stuck on. And for Mentality, the answer started with a YouTube video.
So one of the reasons why I'm here today is because I watched a video on YouTube. It was How to Start a T-Shirt Brand by John Santos. That's all I needed for motivation to get something going. So when I watched John's video, I realized how intense it is to do this. So I contacted him, and he actually invited us to the Magic Convention. It's one of the largest clothing conventions in Las Vegas. We were able to go as a group and kind of like, here are these vendors. And Jason and I, we walked up and down the floor, almost 50, 60 aisles. We spoke to hundreds of vendors and looked at stuff, and we found one supplier who we took a risk on and they took a risk on us. And literally within 5 minutes of meeting this lady, we wired $15,000 for our first order. So we literally went from on-demand services, no risk, to taking the ultimate risk, putting up $15,000 for top and bottom apparel. So at that time, we're seeing a lot of momentum go up, but the quality was down because people were, again, they're not necessarily complaining, but they're like, man, I washed this thing 5 times and it sucks. At the time, like that was the best that on-demand services had, because this was 6 years ago. So it wasn't at the scale it is today. It's very different today. When we started getting increased number of sales, but then we had bad reviews for quality, durability, and it's not the best way to represent your brand. So there wasn't really an inflection point. There was just a standard that we wanted to elevate at. It's the feedback loop. You make the item, you review it, you send it to the customer gives you feedback, and then you iterate again, over and over and over again. Too often brands, they kind of stay in the cycle and nothing changes, and that's why they die.
Now, going overseas for bulk manufacturing is how brands unlock real margin, but it's also where most of them take their most expensive lesson.
We started gaining traction, really scaling, I believe, back in 2021 with our vintage wash shirts, and we wanted to prioritize margins, so we went overseas. What's wild is we went through, I believe, 5 or 6 sample rounds. We get the shirts 3 months later. I think this was like a $60,000 to $70,000 purchase order. They arrive at our warehouse, and after 3 or 4 days wearing them, they're ripping. They don't feel like the samples we approved. They weren't ripping at our warehouse, they were ripping after we sold them to the customers, which made it even worse, because we would get reviews of shirts ripping. That was one of the most costliest purchase orders we've had. So no refund from the manufacturer. What they offered us is a discount on our next order.
A $60,000 lesson on the product side, but the marketing side also has its own tax to pay.
We really decided to stop working with athletes that did not engage with us, didn't follow our page. That was the main driver. We've noticed most of them just couldn't care less about your product, which is, understandable. Most recently, we had a collab with a UFC fighter that went pretty red. Probably 30 to 40K lost. But on the other side of that, we also have had decent partnerships with actual athletes that follow our page, actually care about the products, actually care about the brand and the image.
The lesson is clear. The right people wear your brand when the message actually means something to them. But where does Mentality's message come from? That's a story most people never heard, and a great lesson for new brand owners.
I mean, I think to this day, one of our greatest selling quotes would probably be hard work and God's work. Right when we started the brand Mentality, we started doing a bunch of sales. Everything was great, but then COVID happened, right? So a lot of businesses stalled. Well, I actually had a life-changing experience that really altered my life forever. I was sick in the hospital, I was on a ventilator, and I was dying. I only have 24 hours left to live because I was in critical condition and there were no further steps in treatment at that time. When I was in the hospital, you have a come to Jesus moment and you kind of realize okay, maybe my life really isn't so much about money, the cars, the status, the bills, all these kind of things, they kind of fall out. What motivated me was actually staying alive. If I could stay alive, maybe I could change someone's life. So that's when we started the Text Club, where we would text message hundreds of thousands of people motivating quotes, because we knew that if you were like me and you're having a bad day, maybe a quote, maybe a phrase could change your mentality going through the day.
$200,000 in 3 hours. You spent the last couple minutes watching everything that made that number possible. From the community, the message, the infrastructure. Now Jason breaks down the exact drop strategy behind it.
The big driver for that were backpacks re-released and then a lot of collections being released on that specific day. A really large part of that as well was price variance. So we had items as low as $10. We had free gifts, but then we had mid-tier items in the 40s to 60s, and then backpacks and bundles 80 to 150. So just a plethora of options for customers in any price range for a gift. And then, yeah, a lot of collections and a lot of new releases in one day.
Selling out in 3 hours is one thing. Having the operations in place to actually fulfill is a whole different ballgame. And for Mentality, that part of the story is where things got real.
We had just gotten a warehouse in Vegas. So our first warehouse was, I believe, about 1,800 square feet. I was here in Phoenix, very small, pretty bad area too. Got shot up one night. That was like a wake-up call, was just trying to fulfill orders and big drops in that small space. I think we only lasted about maybe 7 months in that warehouse, and then Next thing I know, I moved to Vegas and we've got a 7,000 square foot warehouse and office space. And that's where the 200K 3-hour drop was fulfilled. Over the years of partnership, we understood what we were good at and restraints and weaknesses. So I'm mainly more on the creative side of things and marketing. And then we had switched to a 3PL about a year ago or so. And yeah, it just made things a lot smoother, but it's also key you find the right 3PL.
Scaling a brand isn't about doing everything. It's about knowing exactly where you add the most value and building systems around everything else. The moment Mentality made a shift to working with a 3PL, the real growth began.
Before we had moved to Vegas, there was a time where we tried a 3PL, just a bunch of hidden fees, storage fees, and then just issues because they're trying to take on as many clients as possible, and it's just they're not gonna care as much. Especially you think you're big, but there's always a company in that 3PL doing $1 million a week, and they're gonna prioritize them over your clothing brand making 200, 300, 400K a month in revenue. So that's why we actually got that giant warehouse in Vegas, moving from Phoenix to Vegas from 1,700 square feet to almost, I believe, about 10,000. With that large warehouse, now we're not only trying to pay ourselves, but we have other people we have to pay and manage, and especially being so young at the time, having to just tell people what to do, how to properly do it, all these different variations of orders and products and bundles we're launching. It was pretty hard. After probably like a year into the new warehouse, I think we both cohesively decided that we were gonna look for a 3PL. And then next thing we know, we found a really solid 3PL, and that let us just sublease the warehouse out.
Jason was 21 years old, managing a full warehouse team and executing $1 million drops, figuring out entirely in real time. Which raises a question. If you can go back to the beginning with everything you've learned the hard way, what would you tell yourself?
It takes a lot of discipline, time, and effort. You will never, ever, ever be able to replace that in any business. There is no such thing as luck. You have to make it on your own. With accountability, with proper systems in place, you can literally go from unknown clothing brand to $1 billion, seen on celebrities, top streetwear, just worn everywhere. And it's easy to do that when you have a system. Trust me, like I've experienced it all. I lived in these fancy places, I've gone to Bali, I've traveled across the world, and it doesn't matter where you are, you need structure. So I would strongly suggest that whether you find a group of friends, whether you join this program, that you literally understand like you will never replace effort, energy, and hard work.
There you have it. Everything you need to build a brand in just one sentence. It takes discipline, it takes work, and in Jason's case, he started it from a small town and built it to a 200,000 in 3-hour brand and has a community of millions of followers all over the world. Mentality can be seen at gyms and churches, and almost anywhere I go, I see one of their shirts. It's been an incredible journey for them, and for this reason, it inspired us to also launch a free community that we actually are gonna link in the description right down below. In that free community, you're able to actually download a pathway. So regardless of where you're at, you'll be able to make a decision on where you should go, how you should start, and you have all the resources under one roof. In addition to that, we have brand owners who are building alongside you, so it's a great place to connect and answer your questions. And for those of you who are ready to build and actually start growing and work with the founders of Mentality, we just launched a Brand Accelerator program, and it's open to new students. Inside of this Brand Accelerator, we go into your brand specific. So if you already have sales, if you have a following, we help you build the right products as well as analyze your store's performance and help it grow. So if you want to learn more, check it out in the description down below, and I'll see you guys on the next one.